Okay, hi everybody. I wanted to welcome you all to the StructionSite and Ryan Company's Procore Groundbreak presentation, The Story Your Data Can Tell, a story about the power of visual information and documentation within integrated systems that helps tell the story of a construction project, all the way from pre-construction through and past project turnover to clients or other property and facility management teams. We are just going to take a few minutes, not even a few seconds here, just kind of linger so that Procore can get their forward-looking statements out there. You guys can all take a quick peek at this. We won't wait here for too long, but we'll give it another 5 or so seconds. And then I think we are pretty good to go. Lisa, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Great. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lisa Leighton, and I am the Director of Operational Excellence at Ryan Companies. My job at Ryan is to help develop, design, and deploy best practices across our company. I'm the main administrator for our Procore project management software and help with the integrations of other various softwares as well.
And I am Chris Jervey. I'm the Director of Business Development here at StructionSite. Constantly looking for and managing exciting partnerships with really great organizations like Procore and doing lots of webinars like you do, Lisa, all the time, talking about how our platforms are talking about the value of site documentation. And we're super excited to be here today also to talk about how our platforms work in concert to help Ryan companies better document their job sites and better understand the story of their projects.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking with you about how Ryan Companies, StructionSite, and Procore have been able to utilize the StructionSite tool through the entire lifecycle of a project. We'll be wrapping up with some insights and what we really can see for the future.
Cool. Awesome. Well, as we start getting, before we kind of dive deep, let's, Lisa, if you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit of information about Ryan Companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan Companies is a $3.2 billion real estate developer and construction general contractor. We have been around for 80 plus years and are a fourth generation family owned business. We have over 1,600 employees across the U.S., based out of 15 different offices. We're heavily invested in the Midwest and the Southern Belt. We have 5 major business units at Ryan. Those are our architecture and engineering group, the construction group, capital markets, which helps us fund our projects, as well as our real estate development and management. So we really partner with our owners from the inception of the idea all the way through to the turnover, and then property management once that building is complete. And just some of the different sectors that we're really working in, some of those include office, senior living, multifamily, healthcare, and industrial, just to name a couple of them.
Just a couple of different segments that you're involved with. Yeah. And obviously you guys use Procore as your project management tool.
We do. Actually, back in 2016 is when we began the search for a new project management platform, and we ultimately ended up choosing Procore. So when we did that, we only implemented the core and the project management tools to begin with. So drawings, submittals, RFIs. We didn't think Procore was quite ready for us with financials, and so we partnered with Procore as well as our third-party integration company. And we were able to begin beta in that financial piece at the end of that year. The following year, so 2018, we were able to implement Procore Financials, which we had fully integrated with our accounting system, which is J.D. Edwards Enterprise One. That's an Oracle product. So we were able to make that happen by the end of 2018. Fast forward 3 years to today. Now we're looking at what can we do with other tools? How can we integrate with other things while keeping Procore as our platform?
Cool. And you use StructionSite, obviously. How did you learn about StructionSite, and then how do you use those tools together?
Yeah, pretty fun story, actually. One of our project managers out in San Diego had heard about StructionSite from one of their vendors that they were working with. And so they reached out to our operational excellence team and asked if they could maybe take a look at it. While they had just heard from their vendor, they actually saw you, Chris, on LinkedIn doing your best to put StructionSite's name out there. And so they asked if we could try it out. I checked in with our vice president of innovation, and he had also heard about StructionSite through some networking groups. And so we decided we wanted to give it a try. Now, the team loved it, but we thought we need to make sure that we're testing this against another 360 photo documentation tool. And as you can see, StructionSite won out. So we were able to establish an enterprise agreement with StructionSite, and now we're encouraging all of our projects to really utilize it. And the fact that the tool was integrated with Procore, we were extra excited. So it's really important for us to keep Procore as our platform so that teams can stay in the tool that they're using every day. And so with that integration and embedded app, we could prevent duplicate entry and provide easy access to our teams. StructionSite's been able to help us solve that site documentation problem. So it tracks progress with the 360 photos. The project team can take those immersive photos throughout the duration of the project, which really helps us provide the client and the project team with accurate and up-to-date visual information about the progression of the project. So why don't you tell us a little bit more, Chris, about StructionSite? You'll do a great job of telling everyone about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So we ultimately exist, a StructionSite, to reduce rework, risk exposure, and ultimately to improve the communication of real-time construction conditions among various project stakeholders. So you guys have obviously started to figure some of that stuff out. We're a leader in the construction job site documentation space. We allow users to ultimately link 360 photos and videos to floor plans so the builders know basically what happened on a project, where, when, and ultimately why and how it happened. Reality capture tools are quickly replacing human eyeballs as the most reliable way to perform project progress tracking and ultimately provide reliable real-time project information. Drones, laser scanners, 360 cameras, they're all ultimately enabling builders to more fully understand what's happening on their job sites, whether they're present or not. We are designed and built by builders for builders. We're not a computer vision team looking for a cool marketplace. We're builders ultimately solving real-world problems for our customers. Why is site documentation important? What do 360 photos, field notes, RFIs, observations, images all provide? Context ultimately is what we're trying to provide. The ability to know exactly what happened on a job site, when, where an issue is located, how to resolve it as quickly as possible. It's all about visibility. Site documentation, as we're talking about today, really tells the story of a project. Most builders already know that taking photos is really valuable. It's almost always written in the specs, so builders do some amount of minimum capture, maybe once a month per the requirements. But what happens when photos get stuck on a camera or just get thrown into photo albums on a folder or on a drive somewhere? That's what we typically see, disorganized photos. And without a better way to organize all that media, builders lose context and they lose visibility. They lose the ability to quickly identify the source of a problem, which typically means lost time and money looking for the information that they need to manage those issues. And the value really is clear and it's immediate. As I said, regular site documentation is going to help reduce the amount of rework that gets done on a project because locating mistakes with accurate time and location data minimizes the time and effort it takes to fix those mistakes. That's going to minimize the total amount of costs on that job. Our video walk tool provides virtual access to job sites and allows owners that aren't always on site to greatly decrease the frequency and the total time needed to see the current or recent status of a site. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later, Lisa. But virtual site access creates new opportunities to perform remote quality assessments and other types of an inspection work from, ultimately from a distance. And then lastly, risk. The ability to manage a claim gets exponentially easier when you have visual evidence. And this isn't about placing blame. It's really just about increasing accountability and making sure that all parties are responsible for their share of the work. It really improves the process of change management and helps drive down the frequency and likelihood of questionable change orders, et cetera. So as you know, we integrate with a number of other tools as well to enhance workflow. So there's a lot of value out there. And I know that Ryan has done a really great job of finding that. So let's start by talking a little bit more about that integration with Procore.
Yeah, so let's start with just logging into StructionSite. There's no need for another new password, which is great. Everybody's got so many passwords these days. The single sign-on option allows us to use our Procore login for StructionSite as well. So the setup of StructionSite, it's so easy because we can sync with Procore. So instead of needing to enter our drawings twice into two different tools, we can just sync them. Also, it's really important for us to be able to archive all of those great photos that we're getting from StructionSite back into Procore because, like I said, Procore is our platform, and that is where we want everything to be kept. And again, click of a button, we can sync all of those photos right back into Procore. Another really great feature that our teams love is the ability to create an RFI or an observation directly from StructionSite. So instead of taking the time to go back to Procore and creating those items, you can do it right from StructionSite, right when you're seeing it and it's happening. And that'll sync over to Procore for you. Another thing that's coming from StructionSite that we're pretty interested in is going to be the ability to sync models. So our virtual design group is actually testing that right now. And that's going to allow us to easily compare to our live models. So compare photos to our live models right in StructionSite. And then just to wrap it all up, StructionSite is an embedded app in Procore. So our teams don't even need to leave Procore to be able to get access to StructionSite. And they can just stay in there.
You just stay in there forever. You don't ever have to leave.
We just
Yeah,
live in there.
and we're super excited, Lisa, about the Procore BIM integration. I think that's going to be incredibly valuable to be able to really do some quick side by sides on what you're actually building versus what you plan to build. As you know, not always the same thing. And we're definitely excited about continuing to facilitate what I call photo first workflows, like those RFIs and observations, where you really can minimize duplicate efforts and data entry. And so, with anything that actually starts with a photo, which is often the case when you have RFIs and observations. Anything else you think we should be looking to build out with that Procore integration?
Yeah, similar to those RFIs and observations, we can really see some benefit of being able to sync punch list items. So again, taking that photo and be able to sync it over to the punch list tab in Procore as well. I think that's high on my list of things I'd like to see.
Another workflow that starts with a photo. Yep. All right. So note to product. We still have some work to do here.
There you go.
Okay. Let's start talking about the story that gets told by this visual documentation and this image data throughout the entire project lifecycle. And a lot of our customers sort of see it in construction, but that story starts before you take a shovel to dirt, right? It starts with understanding the existing conditions during the pre-con and bidding phases. Not every project is new construction. A lot of times you need to get in there and sort of document what that existing site looks like. Tell us a little bit of how you're using StructionSite and site documentation for that process.
Sure. Yeah. We have a group at Ryan called our Ryan Building Services team, and they focus really on tenant improvements. And they've really latched on to StructionSite because there's a lot of existing conditions that they want to document and take into consideration. And so we've been able to use StructionSite to clearly document those conditions and refer back to them as needed. We also find StructionSite really helpful with the bidding piece, not just on the Ryan Building Services and those tenant improvements, but those pictures that we take of existing conditions. The subcontractors, are able to get a feel of the space and understand exactly what it looked like prior to construction. And they don't even need to travel to the job site to do that. They can, utilize StructionSite and really take that virtual tour right from there. And our teams have really said that it's tightened up our bids because, there's no question about what the scope is. They have that photo documentation of what's going on and what those existing conditions are.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we talk a lot about, this, like I said, being evidence or proof. It's really visual proof. So you can always go back to knowing exactly what was there at any given point in time. Very, very cool. All right, let's talk ROI during construction. Because again, this is really where most of our existing customers have seen a lot of value with site documentation. And I know you have too. So tell us a little bit more about where Ryan is seeing value in documenting the job site during the actual construction process as the story of this project and as this building evolves.
Yeah, sure. Construction phase is, of course, the biggest phase, and our on team teammates, the staff that's on site, the field team, the superintendents, they're capturing progress at a certain date, blocking, backing pictures, they're verifying completion of scope. But the benefits also go to our teams that are not on site on a daily basis, and this has especially been the case with our project management team and our upper management who's overviewing the project. Our policy during COVID has been to really keep our project engineers and project managers off of the job site so they can be kind of that backup to our field team in case there is a COVID incident. And one of our projects actually in Nebraska, the team has really found some benefit and it served them really well to be able to have this photo documentation, even though they weren't on site. And they really think that even after COVID, the team thinks that they're going to still use this because directors of construction, project executives, they're often not on the job site, but they can really still be in there and have that detailed look of the project by having StructionSite photo documentation.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. We saw this a lot during COVID, as you would expect, where our customers just needed to be able to keep projects moving forward, and they didn't have a lot of site access, just like you guys were experiencing. But there's still a lot of remote work that's happening, and I think some of these processes really are likely to kind of stay because they just create new efficiencies. What other improvements and money savings have you found during construction?
Yeah, so let me tell you a couple stories on how we've been able to save money, time, both of them. So StructionSite has been able to help us verify if subcontractors' change order requests are valid and if they're completing their scope according to that schedule. So our project managers, they need to be aware to keep our cost accounting in line. And one of the teams mentioned that in one scenario, they've been able to save a couple $1,000s because they were able to verify what was actually happening on the site and what was happening with that scope of work. And having that consistently up to date keeps us all in the know. One of our senior living facilities down in Texas, we had a major issue actually that came up, and StructionSite was able to really help us out. We had passed all the fire stop inspections and rocked in our ceilings, but then realized that we had used the wrong Hilti straps and to encase the 3-inch pipes, and they were penetrating the demising walls. And with all of those ceilings being rocked, without StructionSite, we would have had to cut holes in every single unit ceiling
Mhm.
and see if that situation was there. Instead, we went back to our photos and had that documented everything and pinpointed each of the roughly 25 occurrences where this condition was actually present. That really cut down on a lot of rework cost
Yeah,
and
and
time savings.
Yeah, and one of the things that we see, and that I want to point out is that this stuff really adds up, right? From a cost perspective, it finding and fixing the wrong straps, right? 25 occurrences, one of them maybe not a huge deal. 25 of them starts to get to be a bigger deal, right? Buried
Yeah.
outlets, blocking, things that you just can't see anymore. These are small things that open that happen all the time, and they really start to add up. So yeah. Okay. So tell us the story. I know there's a great story about an inspector change in the middle of a project here. Tell us that story.
Yeah, this was actually out on one of our projects in San Diego. It may actually have been our beta project. We were able to save ourselves significantly. We had a change of inspectors in the middle of the project, and our new inspector wanted to see the fire sprinkler corrections that were noted on the plans. But by this time, the ceilings were completely covered up by through the entire building. So we were able to pull those photos from StructionSite to use as our documentation, and it was a huge savings. It worked. And so we didn't have to do a lot of work or pay a lot of money to get him the information that he needed.
Yeah, that makes me feel good to help you avoid that pain.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked a little bit earlier about sort of critical virtual site access. How critical virtual site access has been to ultimately keeping Ryan employees working on projects, but using StructionSite as kind of a virtual access, virtual site tour has actually become more of a standard process for you guys regarding remote collaboration among all sorts of different project stakeholders, right? You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So when we have our out of state owners and architects, they love StructionSite because they're able to look at that and they're able to ask questions along the way. They find it so easy to just walk the job site virtually that they can provide their comments and ask their questions to make sure that it's being built per their design and what they were looking for. So instead of waiting till the end, they can do it while it's happening. Travel expenses for them as well, whether they're out of state or in state, they're saving that travel expense. And I know that our project teams have told us that they think we're easily saving an hour and a half per person who doesn't have to travel that to the job site. So there's money savings and time savings. That's the case with our teams and the owners and architects. But one of the coolest things, and I know one of our project managers told me this, it's the transparency that our owners and architects get. Our teams said they just love it because during an owner meeting, a subcontractor meeting, design meeting, they can just pull up StructionSite. And if it's implemented well, if we're taking all of those progress photos, it gives a broader perspective in real time. And you can make good, timely decisions. We're often waiting on decision making to happen. And if we can pull that up during a meeting, we can get decisions made more quickly. That's going to lead to a job site culture just of success. And it's really, it's pretty cool to see the visibility and transparency that we can give to the entire team.
Yeah, we were joking about this yesterday, Lisa, right? And how this industry isn't always great with sort of transparency and visibility and trust. And as corny as this sounds, one of the things I'm most proud of at StructionSite is like the ability, I think, for us to actually help build additional trust through transparency and through visibility. Like I said, it's project proof, right? It's not about placing blame. It's really just about making sure that there's more accountability and more transparency in the process among various stakeholders. And it makes me honestly a little bit proud to help try to be a part of that. So I'm glad to see that you guys are really seeing that play out on your projects. Okay, so let's move to sort of post construction, right? I mean, we all know that the story of a building doesn't end once construction is complete. Many of us are done with our projects, or at least we move into the warranty phase, but we're not. The building lives on, and you guys actually are in a really unique place to talk a little bit more about this. So talk about using site documentation to ultimately maintain the facility, manage the property throughout that building life cycle after the build work is complete.
Yeah, so maybe before I talk about the buildings complete and we're out, really just that turnover. We've been syncing our photos over to Procore the entire time, so we don't have to wait for that archive process to happen. It's being done the whole time. But StructionSite also gives us the offline project deliverable. It allows us, again, click of a button, export all the drawings, all the photos, and we can get them into PDF format. Those PDFs are the drawings and they have hyperlinks to the photos. So we can hand that off to the owner if they want something just easily handed over to them. So that's pretty cool. But recently, as I said earlier, we have a properties group. And recently we were able to transfer some of our projects over to that group. There's 3 projects that we've transferred to that real estate management group, and they're utilizing StructionSite on a day-to-day operations basis. The property manager and engineering staff have really loved it. It started back in May, so it hasn't been happening too long, but they're really finding value. And they shared with me a couple stories of how they found that value. One of them was they had a water leak. They were able to pull up StructionSite, look behind that wall, see that there was, a water pipe behind that wall, and they could pinpoint that issue really quickly. Another story, they said property contracts can be very different and challenging, and they're often a lot of talk about completion date. When was this completed by? And there was some discussion about a bathroom and when it was completed. And they were able to tell that story with the photo documentation we had in StructionSite and confirm we were done by a specific date. And then even on another project, they had various teammates that were in a meeting together, virtual meeting, owner or the tenant, the designers, the property team, construction team, and they had an issue in a room. Instead of waiting to send someone up to that room to get some pictures, find out what was going on, they brought up StructionSite, they looked through the room, did a virtual tour, and they solved the issue in 3 minutes. I bet they couldn't even walk there and come back in 3 minutes. So they were really able to save time and get decisions made and just move on. really quickly. So, right now our properties team is using it as really a read only. They're viewing StructionSite, but they can really see some ways to use this even more in the future. One, think about, you have a conference room and you decide you want to split it into two offices. You want to photo document that. They'd be adding to the StructionSite photo documentation. They've talked about things like new staff coming onto the properties team and saying, hey, take a virtual tour of the building. And sometimes those team members are a little bit better at viewing photos than plans. So it's really helpful in those scenarios. And then the last thing they mentioned was security and safety. Is there a way StructionSite could potentially help them in security situations or safety situations? They're pretty excited to find out what more it can do. It's only been since May, so more to come from them, I think.
Yeah, and this is why we're so excited to have Ryan as a customer. We're excited about tech savvy, but more importantly, tech curious partners. Who really want to investigate those with us and try to find additional value. So we have much work to do together, as you know, and you guys obviously see real value in discovering and implementing new technology. Any other tech trends and tools that you kind of see coming down the pike that are of interest?
Yeah, I think the biggest buzzwords, it's data and dashboards right now. And we have so much good information that we're collecting from tools like StructionSite and Procore that we want to know, what can we do with that data? How can we think ahead? And can we compare schedules to these photos? We're doing that manually, but can we start to maybe automate that and do model comparisons? And, how can we begin to make adjustments for future projects? If you think about all those RFIs and observations we're making with these photos and putting into Procore, we can start to see, do we have an owner that's maybe replicating the same thing, or a subcontractor, or maybe our heads and beds projects are we're seeing something similar in those projects. So how can we use this information and be more forward thinking with it? And StructionSite is key to that, to be able to give us that data. Procore, StructionSite, we need to collect that data to be able to have those insights.
And we talk about this all the time, right? Is the data your story can tell. It's telling the story of that building, but it's also telling you that all that image data, we end up being a warehouse for all of your image data. And what additional stories can that image data tell you? Well, it's trending information. It's about different types of projects, different subcontractor performance, different types of communication improvement opportunities with different project stakeholders. So there is so much more that we can do to use that data and really help you guys improve performance, not just at the project level, but really across the enterprise. So again, we're super excited to keep investigating those opportunities with you and our other partners. Okay, so this, we're sort of talking about this whole thing as if it's, no problem, no biggie. But we know that changing old legacy business processes can be challenging. For those folks that maybe are just getting started with, how do we really look into implementing some of these new technologies and transforming themselves into more data-driven type of organizations? Any advice?
Sure. Yeah. Deploying a new tool or changing a process, that's hard for a lot of people, probably everyone that's hard for. So for us, it's really important that we have early buy-in from our construction teams, from our teammates. And we do that by engaging a beta team. I mentioned that about StructionSite. We engage a beta team, typically from various regions, to be able to test it out. And that team in the StructionSite case was able to bring back us, give us information on what worked well and what didn't work. So together we develop and refine what the best practices should be. And by having that early buy-in from our teammates, we can share their experience as well as ours to produce a stronger testimonial for that new tool or process. And so our end users can start off feeling more comfortable with the tool because they know that their teammates were using it and tried it out, and it's not just a department bringing it to them. So definitely trial it out and use your teammates, have them along on the journey.
We're big fans of of having the actual user be a big part of your discovery and implementation processes really helps to translate, information and workflows from the field all the way up through into the enterprise and into the corporate offices, so you guys can kind of have a better understanding of where the real value lies. This has been awesome, Lisa. I know we're at time, and so I think we pretty much can wrap it up here. I hope everybody got a really good understanding of how Ryan Companies is using Procore and StructionSite together, all the way from pre-con and bidding, all the way through to project turnover and facility management, property management, et cetera. It's been really great to present with you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everyone.